and they believe this might be in retaliation.
Self-reliance and independence. The Pepper Broadcasting Network.
What is up, members? I want to talk to you about something like a revelation that I had, Matter of Facts podcast, at my son's 11th birthday when we were shooting paintball. It became evident to me after I really enjoy paintball. It's physically demanding. It's, strategic and tactical. I like practicing things with real consequences, and there's something about paintball that presents a very real consequence, right? Which is one of the reasons why I don't do a ton of range time, aside from the fact that it costs a bunch of money. I think that I do it. It's important. Right? But it's not like I'm there every weekend. I'm not an every weekend range time guy. I think it serves a purpose, right? Obviously the understanding the firearm, how it works, how to take it apart, right? How to manage it when it's jammed, when to know, probably the most important thing that I've ever gained from range time after learning how to stand and shoot properly, has been knowing my gun and when it's not working. Right? Really. Knowing my gun, knowing what working order it's in. What's wrong with it? Is there something that is going to go wrong with it? How much can I depend on it? Is it time for a new one? Is it time to send it for repair? Whatever. Zero consequences at range. Holes through paper targets, right? And that's okay and it's good. But it brought me to this concept. I started thinking more about the type of shooting that I do with my kids compared to the type of gun culture that exists in the prepper world and beyond, right? And I started thinking to myself, there are two things. There are those in gun culture, I don't even want to put it on people, really. There's these two opportunities, right? There's gun culture, there's shooting culture. And I think people don't even know what shooting culture is, or even if they're a part of it, or even if it's that solid a culture yet. But I think it is. I think you got a pretty good grip on gun culture, right? Gun culture. We like guns. We like news about Second Amendment. We like shooting guns. We like ammunition talk. All the various accessories and things that go along with firearms, how to carry them, how to conceal them, how, the various range exercises, firing exercises that go along with that. Gun culture is this thing, right? It's this thing that, it centers around guns, right? It centers around guns. And my handgun is currently in my backpack. I don't think you need to see my gun, right? I know a lot of people do that. Start talking about guns, they pull their gun out. As if to verify, right? Like, that's what a gun looks like. So, gun culture, shooting culture. What is shooting culture? Shooting culture is something that I'm a part of. Much more than the gun culture. Shooting culture is, at its essence, shooting culture is putting a projectile on a target for various purposes with various degrees of consequence, right? But the shooting culture, you hear shooting culture, you might think like target shooting, right? The guys with the EO techs running through the thing, with the big goggles and the... I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about the culture of putting projectiles on target for a myriad of reasons with a myriad of consequences. Okay? So, one example. This is a BB gun. Looks sweet, but it's just a BB gun. I don't even remember where I got this thing. But that's all it is. It's not a real Magnum, right? It's just a BB gun. You can put rounds on target with varying degree of consequences for various reasons, right? I keep this thing around. It actually needs to be repaired. There's something wrong with it. The pellets don't come out right. This is a pellet gun. CO2 powered. I have dreams of shooting squirrel with it, maybe. I definitely have dreams of using it as a predator deterrent in the yard, right? Chicken protector, if you will. But it's rounds on target in one form or another, right? Outside of actual guns and firearms. I don't know how well this is going to translate, but this is a 20-pound pool PVC recurve bow. Okay, outfitted with your typical traditional bowstring, right? This guy is, I mean, it's a great little bow. It's a great little, I bought it for Lady Liberty, actually. And target shooting, right? You could put a judo tipped arrow into that thing and take down small game for sure, no doubts. But it's another version of putting projectiles on target for varying purposes and varying degrees of consequence, right? Because if I shoot you with a broadhead from this thing, you're going to have a serious problem depending on where that broadhead enters your body, right? You've got long bows, you got crossbows. Did you know that with recurve bows, now I haven't had a chance to do this yet, people are playing a game where they shoot, it's called archery tag, where they shoot arrows with, don't dry fire your bows, by the way. They shoot arrows with a big puff top, like a big foam top, at each other while they're running around, playing tag, archery tag. This is what I mean by shooting culture. So now you have this new thing going on, this new sort of projectiles on targets for varying consequences. I'm sorry, the dogs are playing in the other room. Shooting culture. Okay? And here's the thing about shooting culture. It does more for you as a shooter than it does as a gun owner. Right? Gun culture does a lot for you in certain ways. If you don't have a bunch of money, gun culture can be really hard to keep up with. It can be really, you can wind up owning a handful of guns that you don't get a lot of time to use, and you use them in very limited ways to do very limited things. Shooting culture. It's pretty cool. My son bought this, I don't know if I bought it for him or if he bought it with his own money. I can't remember. But it's just a airsoft gun. Familiar with airsoft? It's out of ammunition. He must have been shooting it. You put little plastic BBs in here. Load the magazine. There's also a CO2 cartridge in here. You see? It's pretty cool. Airsoft, we haven't had an opportunity to really play with a group. But again, it's another part of this shooting culture, right? Shooting projectiles at targets, various targets. May they be people, right? Because people targets are important. They move. They go places. They hide behind cover. They make life hard at you. Most importantly, they shoot projectiles back, which is not something you get. It's not something you can ever get in gun culture, right? Unless it's a serious, life-threatening situation. You don't have the opportunity to, unless you talk about like simunition or something like that, but you don't have the opportunity to pick up a 9mm and run around with your friends and say, hey buddy, right? And put rounds on your buddy with a 9mm. Paintball gun, airsoft gun, archery tag. You can put these things, put these projectiles on target, on moving human-shaped targets, real humans running, hiding. And to me, that's shooting culture, guys. That's what this thing is. You know, it's far beyond just the firearm, right? It includes the firearm, because you can do a bunch of guns and maybe even gun culture definitely fit within shooting culture. And it's fun to shoot steel, it's fun to shoot targets, it's fun to shoot, all kinds of things with guns. It's fun to shoot things with guns. Because it is, right? Guns are sweet. They're a good time. But I wouldn't recommend dying in gun culture. I wouldn't recommend living only for gun culture or spending all your time in gun culture. I got the new this, and I put the new this on it, and I got this to put it over my head, and I got this case to carry it, and this holster, right? It's all good. It's all, if you love it, then you love it. Who am I to get in your way? All I'm telling you is shooting culture is a much wider and in my opinion, a much better way to experience sort of our technologies that we've created to launch projectiles at varying targets with varying degrees of consequence. I think that it would make you much more effective in self-defense to spend more time in shooting culture, right? And you know what else is in shooting culture, like it or not? Virtual reality. You know what else is in shooting culture? Video games. Again, varying degrees of targets, varying degrees of projectiles, varying degrees of consequences, right? Probably think there's very little that you can gain from video games and virtual reality. I beg to differ. Shooting and communicating and moving and attacking a target is way easier to do on a rainy afternoon in a video game or virtual reality than it is to do ever in the outside world. This is another big point about shooting culture versus gun culture that I want to drive home. Because I want you to understand reps, the concept of reps. In shooting culture, you can get a lot of reps for next to nothing. You can buy a container, I have one right behind this wall, of airsoft BBs for like $20, thousands of them. I think it's 10,000, right? For like $20 or something. Don't quote me. But it's cheap. And you could go shoot each other with airsoft all day. You could bring friends over, shoot a bunch of friends with airsoft, have fun. Move on target, right? Practice hiding behind whatever you want to do with airsoft, you can do it. It's freaking a ball. Protect your eyes. Protect your face. Protect anything that you value, because they don't hurt bad, but they can mess you up, especially at close range. So you can go through reps, right? How you handle this gun, right? Sight picture and so on. All that kind of stuff. You can go through all these reps without ever having to pay the money to go to a range and shoot, waste the ammunition of shooting. And of course, there's no recoil. It's a different thing. But you're still getting serious reps if you're gathering together with a group. In other words, if you're strategizing, right, with a group of people on how to attack a target, let's just say, how to attack a certain area, how to take a building or whatever it is. If you're doing things based on strategy, there's probably a handful of times you do that in real life, right? Now, I would never say don't do that stuff in real life. Don't do those real trainings with all your gear in real life. But the reality is you're not doing it every week. You're not doing it every month, probably. However, you can use technologies like virtual reality and video games to do it much more often. You could schedule a night of the week. It'll cost you nothing, next to nothing to do, as long as everybody in your group is on it, right? And you could do some fun stuff. You could practice some serious techniques, strategies, and so on. I didn't get into prepping to become a special operations soldier, okay? That's not my motivation here. But I do want to be proficient. I don't want to be proficient at owning cool guns with cool gear. I want to be proficient at shooting projectiles at targets, right? Shooting culture. So PBN family, I just wanted to put this in your pipe so that you can smoke it. I wanted you to understand that there's a gun culture out there, and there's nothing wrong with the gun culture that's out there. But there's a much broader range of activities. And I'm calling all that scooped up together, those activities, I'm calling that shooting culture. And it's brought on, shooting culture has come to be because we have figured out a lot of ways to shoot projectiles at one another, right? Or at other things, because hunting is what? Shooting culture, right? We found out many ways to shoot projectiles at each other and other things, that's outside of firearms. Not to say that shooting culture doesn't include firearms, but you don't need access to a bunch of firearms and thousands of rounds of ammunition to enjoy shooting culture. And you don't need access to a range, you don't need it, right? And that's the thing I'm trying to get translated here. Live in shooting culture. And when you have the money and the time, go over to gun culture, right? Upgrade, fire your weapons, practice your range, whatever. But embrace shooting culture. Take my advice, okay? Since I had children, we've embraced many, many levels of shooting culture. It's been so fun. What do you think Nerf guns are? Nerf guns are shooting culture. Now, Nerf guns are basically pointless when it comes to shooting at a distance greater than 5 feet. But it's still that shooting culture. Projectile at a target, right? Slingshot, for God's sake. Embrace shooting culture, PBN family. You'll see much bigger gains than if you just say, I use my gun at range time, and that's how I learn to shoot. That's what I do to learn how to shoot, and that's the full extent of my shooting knowledge, right? Shooting culture. Embrace it. Airsoft, paintball, archery tag, archery targets, bow hunting, rifle hunting, right? Slingshot play. I don't know. Virtual reality shooting, video games. Get into it. You know, if you don't like it, then you just don't do it. But get into it. Give it a try. Embrace the shooting culture on a whole and understand there's more than just your handgun, your AR-15, shooting paper targets, 20 yards downrange or whatever you do. Okay? A lot of fun to be had. Talk soon.